Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my Ghostwire Tokyo perspective. And I played this on Xbox Series X. It originally came out as a timed exclusive on the PS5, and I played it on Game Pass, but I also bought it to kind of see, it was on like a sale and everything, and I kind of wanted to support it to see what was kind of going on with it. I think it's a decent first step, but there's some issues that I hope that if they do get a sequel for, that they are able to kind of iron out. I overall liked the story and the characters that they had, but its overall gameplay was kind of boring and kind of basic, kind of shootery, that really had some issues with it that kind of got frustrating to kind of deal with. Not to the complete level that I was like on a Dark Souls level, like I fucking quit this thing and I am not having fun kind of scenario, but it got kind of close to those certain kind of things because of how the first person shooting kind of works with this. And you can definitely tell that this is kind of their first foray with it, and it definitely pops up some frustration. So if you're not into first person shooters, playing this, I could definitely understand why you would be more cemented in that kind of fact. And if you do like first person shooters, you'd be like, hopefully when they get if they get a second game out of this or a sequel for like a different kind of characters or whatnot, because honestly I think that they ended the story well enough that these characters would be done with it, but that we would have other kind of in-universe things going on. And it really goes into Japanese folklore, but in my opinion, it really doesn't do much for it other than just utilize Japanese folklore and just kind of works it a little bit into the story, but doesn't do anything kind of twisting with it, in my opinion. Like, it's just kind of there and you just deal with, oh, here's this one kind of Japanese folklore thing, here it is, and we're kind of dealing with it. It's like, alright. And it just gets down to the game design, I think, of it, and what their kind of objectives were with it, because this one's definitely a good one to look at of how game design kind of hinders certain kind of aspects that you might want to do, because you go through it and it's cool that there's all this Japanese folklore and mythology within it, but then they run into the ground of how do you interact with it. Most of the times there are kind of things that give you kind of an explainer, and I'd rather just read stories or other kind of tales about it, because that's more the value add. And then the thing is, I had to interact with these certain kind of systems to get certain kind of upgrades or spirit points to upgrade my character. Again, we've gotten into a kind of trap with certain kind of things with game design where everything is done into a certain kind of effect that the hours played is the best kind of thing of like your dollar per hour is where you get your most value, and I don't believe that's the case. I believe the best value you get is how fun you have. I would rather take a game that's like, granted, 30 minutes is really kind of short, but if I had really a lot of fun with it, I would be amiable to doing a certain kind of like value kind of thing for it. You have to like aim for what's going on for the value for the games. Now, granted, that gets into budget and everything, but it affects what kind of goes on here. Because if this was just a single player story where you would unlock certain abilities as the game goes on, I believe this would have been fairly better. Otherwise, they have added on open world things that severely just dilute it and fuck with the pacing. Again, it goes back to the objective of what do you want to accomplish with this game? Because I had to make sure, even though it's about like 6 chapters and could be done pretty shortly, depending upon what kind of difficulty level you go on, you're not really getting into that many kind of things that go on with your upgrades. And honestly, most of the upgrades didn't really affect much. See, I like to experience as much of a game as possible depending upon what goes on with the game. If a game is essentially wasting my time, a la Destiny, where you just have shit that's time gated, and it depends upon the whims of the developers of what's nerfed and what's not, and how they want you to spend, and how your time and your money in something. Fuck that shit. This, because we get into these other games and they get open world shit tacked on almost because they think we need more hours for people to play this thing, and that isn't necessarily the case. Grand Theft Auto, which I'm playing through certain kind of ones, older ones, because I'm waiting for picking up certain kind of ones, and like Dead Space and Resident Evil 4, you could play these things for hours because they were fun. They didn't necessarily need to be that long. This one, I know you could finish in like 20 or so hours, I believe. If you just try and like mainline what's going on and at a decent kind of difficulty. It took me around 30 some hours. I still enjoyed the story and the kind of unique takes of like what you were attempting to do with it, but there's a lot of bloat, and that's even with this kind of shorter kind of game, and it's like, damn, it really would have been a nice streamlined, honed kind of experience that delved into lore or whatnot, or execute it in ways that would have been better, but it just follows, okay, here are these things that you need for upgrade pass, here are these kind of certain kind of mythological creatures, chase them around and take their power kind of shit. Or do a horde defense kind of mode to get their shit. Or here's these kind of side quests that are... none of them are really that memorable. I'm like even trying to remember them, and I don't really remember much of them. Now granted, I completed this about like the past week or whatnot. I kind of sit on certain kind of stuff to kind of ruminate on certain kind of things. I try not to like do it immediately afterwards, so that way, because sometimes you got a recency kind of thing. Like if you're in a really good mood for it, you're like, oh yeah, and then you think about it later and you're like, wait a minute, here's some other problems that like pop up or whatnot, and or here's some other good things that you might not have thought of. Now granted, you don't have to, it's dependent upon what you're doing. You don't have to sit on something for a month to figure out if you like it or not, but you got to watch out for what you did it like the day before. So, side quests were just the side quest typical kind of thing. Like, sometimes you have to go somewhere, and they just kind of follow the same kind of path. It's like, eh. But the main story, let's see, what do we want to do? Let's kind of get into the basic kind of premise, maybe get into the certain kind of gameplay aspects, and then kind of finish off actually talking about the story. So the main kind of conceit is you're Akito, you're going to your sister who is in the hospital because of some accident. However, things start going to shit, and he gets hit on his motorcycle, and then this disembodied spirit who we call KK pretty much tries to latch onto him and take control of his body to do some kind of shit. And this dude in this Hanya mask, Hanya? I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly, Hannnya. Same kind of tattoo that Goro Majima has in the Like a Dragon series. He's like, hey, because we see this fog roll in. They're like, hey, dude, are you alright? He's like, kind of. And the fog rolls in, people blast out of their clothes, and they've disappeared. And we see these kind of weird visitor things. These are these spirits, and they're pretty much the main enemies. Since KK has possessed you, you're able to utilize spirit abilities, kind of similar to Yu Yu Hakusho, which you've got this kind of like wind weaving, water weaving, fire weaving, and then certain kind of just tools of like a bow and arrow, certain talismans eventually in your arsenal to deal with these visitors, which are pretty much like spirits and emotions that are tied to certain kind of things, but they're your typical kind of things. They have one kind of core concept, and then they kind of like either make them fat, bigger, different kind of move sets, but they're kind of their basic kind of thing. But one, there are kind of bigger, stranger ones that pop up. The most annoying one is your main basic cannon fodder are pretty much the same. Then you get some kind of special ones that you have that just pretty much are bullet spongy and take more damage before you're able to rip their core out. And that's a kind of mechanic that gives you more ether back to give you more kind of ammo. However, you have to keep running around the place and destroying these kind of crystallized ether things to get more ammo. It's kind of annoying that you have this ammo kind of concept with this whole kind of spirit thing. I would have rather taken... because we have a healing system, I would have rather taken a system where you had consumables to get your ammo or spirit power or mana back up more than just going around hitting things to try and get that and money. It's just not very engaging to me and was kind of a boring kind of thing. Not the worst kind of thing I've had to deal with, but it was just kind of boring. It's like, there's got to be better ways to do this. When you're just trying to design these kind of things, if I have to think about these and how to kind of go around and do this and have to go and just run around pretty much hitting things to kind of get things, it's kind of weird. It kind of follows almost the Legend of Zelda thing, but I never really got that annoyed or bored with it in the Legend of Zelda. So, I was talking about enemies. We do get some weird kind of ones, but they're more kind of bullet spongy and different. But you're like, okay, here's where we're going. And we then go off to kind of go for the sister. The dude wants the body to fight the Honeyman. And that's pretty much our basic conceit. The gameplay, the main kind of one enemy-wise is this one that was kind of introduced. It's this flying top one that the ability to lock on is shit. Trying to hit this motherfucker was annoying as hell, and trying to like get past it to fight it was just not fun. You couldn't really hit it that easily. It was able to have a spinning top move that would be able to deflect your attack, so you're wasting ammo, and then you've got no ammo for your abilities, and then you're just like, hey, I gotta now run around another kind of place and hope that I can fucking get some ammo to like kill it. It's like, So that's that. Going around and essentially doing the Ubisoft kind of open world stuff to cleanse Torii gates, deal with these weirder kind of enemies that are just mainly more bullet spongy and not really that tactically heavily involved. Even with the difficulty levels, it's just mainly spikes in health and damage. It's really kind of weird. The main aspect that I like is the story, so you're going to be looking at me like, wow, you really don't sound that enthused with the gameplay aspect, and I'm not. I'm into first-person shooters. I'm also into different various kind of Japanese games, depending upon how they're made, JRPGs, action-adventure kind of ones, similar to kind of like an Uncharted or Indiana Jones style. Also kind of Devil May Cry, kind of action fighters as well. This just was kind of bland in how you interact and go with the world. It's like, oh, okay. And if you like this game, that's alright. I don't hate this game. I think it's got a decent base, world-wise and character-wise, that I hope that they either reconfigure or rechange or learn from what's going on, because it didn't feel good playing this first-person shooter kind of aspect. And it's really kind of nuts because it's got kind of stuff similar to Yu Yu Hakusho, but I'm like, now thinking about it and talking about it, I'm thinking I would really rather have a Yu Yu Hakusho game, which I played the Game Boy one, which was kind of, that one was fun. That one was fun. Yeah. That makes me more want a Yu Yu Hakusho game better done, where you're able to have your abilities and do your fighting and everything, kind of similar to like the Dragon Ball ones that we've been getting through various kind of console cycles. The main thing with the game is you have to like playing it. And if you don't like playing it, that's your main way of interacting with it. Otherwise, you'd rather just want to read it or watch it or whatnot, like a movie or a book, or watch a Let's Play of it. And I don't like saying it, but I would recommend more, if you want to experience the story, to just watch a Let's Play of it. Or I don't like saying that about a game, ever. I don't. Even with the ones that have frustrated me, like Deadly Premonition, the objective of a game is it's supposed to be fun to play. And play through it, experience the story, experience crazy gameplay moments, understanding and trying to figure out what you need to do within the game. That's like it's that thing where you were involved, and that's it's one of the core things that I love about games. I felt involved playing Halo, Witcher 3, the Mass Effect games, Grand Theft Auto, all those ones that I have fun and I'm playing through. Phoenix Wright. I know that's weird, but even though that's more of a visual novel, but this, it's like, eh. And I didn't even get to a frustration level where I'm like, I don't want to play this anymore. I'm like, alright, I kind of want to get to the story and see what's going on. So, we get to the story, and we've got a lot of things going on. We've got KK's side going on, we got Akito and his sister Mari. It was interesting with the brother and sister aspect. However, I didn't get the full effect of it because of the downside of I would do story missions, but then I would do other kind of stuff in the open world to unlock Torii gates, making sure that I would be able to like go around and get certain kind of things, make sure that I had leveled up and been able to have as much health that I need, so that way I can also get more ammo, praying at these statues to get higher ammo counts and more power and all that. Other kind of stuff, you would get certain kind of things to unlock certain things because you'd have spirit points for your abilities, and then you'd have Magatama to unlock this stupid arbitrary gate to then, in between certain abilities, to then do more spirit points, skill points to get the full effect. And the thing is, none of them really changed the gameplay aspect much for it, other than to make it slightly more difficult or slightly more easy after you've gotten it. Like, I didn't get any crazy kind of gameplay changes where I could turn into a giant fucking wind thing and be like, whoa! Now, granted, I don't need complete kind of crazy kind of gameplay changes, but it doesn't really add that much tactical viability. It's just like, oh, I can take more hits, or I can dish out more hits at more power to deal with the cannon fodder or the kind of boss more enemies. It's your typical kind of video game design that I've seen executed better in other games. And this is me neutral. This isn't me just like trying to slam it and call it completely and utter crap. This is like your basic kind of game thing that I would see if it's done. So I'm not quite sure what their objective was for making this, because it's like, okay, this is just typical kind of game that I could get out of any kind of thing. I would more rather go with an indie that's really kind of experimenting on certain kind of stuff, or really distilling themselves down to doing like a Metroidvania kind of game and understanding that concept and executing it well, rather than this. It's like, okay, so we get the main story, and that's and the thing is, that's important for me to talk about because it dilutes the impact of Akito and Mari. Because if I was able to go through a better kind of clip of the main story, instead of making sure that I've got all these kind of things through the point of no return and all that, I would have rather just blown through the main story missions and been like, oh, okay, because we see that Mari's in the hospital. She had some kind of accident, is in a coma, and the Hania man's like, I'm going to use this chick as a vessel. And then it's essentially booping around, following him around, and we mainly get the stuff in backstories that, like, he is trying to reunite with his family. He believes that the body is a prison. And the thing is, I hate when important stuff is... This isn't value add. We needed more of this important kind of stuff of like him with his hands, him losing his wife, and then eventually puppeting his wife and his daughter. A really important aspect that really hit me was his daughter, Erica. She links up with KK and his group of special investigators, who are your typical kind of Scooby Gang, investigating the supernatural and paranormal and doing their typical kind of shit around the town. But even with their flavors, like, Akito's trying to deal with everything. He comes to terms. He's like, hey, let's work together and do this, as we see their bond kind of grow. Their relationship, KK and Akito, first up, KK trying to take over his body and be like, fuck you, man, I gotta deal with this asshole. It's like, I need to make sure that my sister... I want to save my sister kind of shit, which I kind of get, but it's your same basic kind of premise. That's kind of all they kind of do. But we learned that she was in like this fire, couldn't get out, and has been in a coma. They lost their parents, and they were kind of like dealing with it in their own ways. And we learned later on that she was in that kind of accident because she went back to get her parents' rings, the only kind of mementos they had left. And that she doesn't blame him as we get to the end. But the real kind of concept is they're just kind of booping around. We're dealing with this whole fog that's kind of encompassing things, so it's pretty much just map reveal for a good chunk of it. But there, let's see. They plan to steal enough souls to destroy the barrier between the world of the living and the dead so Hania can resurrect his dead wife and daughter, even though he's puppeting KK's body, his daughter's body, and his wife's body. KK tried to utilize this to kind of like get his body back, but we don't really get that, and we just fight his boss battle twice. We fight the daughter Erica's kind of cat thing, which is definitely a really good boss battle because it's more kind of stealthy, but it's mainly because of connecting with Erica's aspect of like I really connected with her because she's like she feels like a pet, like a cat. She's like the more worse everything gets, the more hollow she gets, and I really connected with her on that kind of aspect. But the side stuff doesn't really do much to flesh out her stuff. It's just more kind of, oh, here's more game content because we kind of need to add it. It's more interesting to kind of link up Erica with Rinko, who is one of the other investigators, who is the only one really in the city, because everybody got poofed into body, and she's pretty much a spirit, and we kind of work with her to kind of figure out what's going on. So it's mainly going around opening up the map and trying to get to Hania to stop the ritual of breaking down the barriers of the living and the dead. Let's see here. Also bringing up how KK has distanced himself from his wife and his son to kind of protect them. Yeah, and then it just pretty much gets to the end. Hania is pretty much questioning if Akito cares anything about Mari, if she doesn't, if she actually wants to do this stuff that Hania is doing to pretty much make a new Eden kind of bullshit thing. But they like go into this mouth thing. Let's see here. Evidently that Mari was like almost suicidal because of the loss of the parents and Akito's coldness. He became like an emotionally closed off person for everything. She pretty much absolves Akito, being like it wasn't her fault, it wasn't his fault. Getting the wedding rings, we see that Hania has climbed. He was like thrown into pretty much the underworld and climbs back out, having fused with like his daughter and wife. And then we get that last kind of boss battle with a little slug kind of thing that's kind of reminiscent of like Spirited Away kind of shit. And then we see that Mari is given to the mother and father's spirit at the end. Akito has a nice kind of moment with KK before he buggers off, and then that's pretty much the end of the main story. And then you can go back to the point of no return. It's more the gameplay aspect that kind of screwed with me. I was interested in seeing that the aloofness of what was kind of going on with Erica and being in the situation that she was in and trying to be more active and being able to change things and make her own kind of decisions really resonated with me. Akito and Mari's relationship was not as focused on as much as it could have been to me, but that mainly could be how I played the game of doing some story missions and then making sure that I did all this kind of side content to make sure I could get to certain kind of places or had my abilities up enough to snuff to deal with certain kind of threats, throwing off the pacing of what was going on. So that could definitely be a me problem on how I played the game, and I can completely acknowledge that, and it could have severely hampered my enjoyment. I did like seeing KK and Akito at first being kind of adversarial and then getting to the kind of point at the end where they respect each other and acknowledge each other, even though they go their separate ways of KK going on to the afterlife and Akito trying to live his life kind of as a way to honor his parents and his sister. But it just normally, like, I'm usually more partial to a brother and sister relationship because of the one that I've got in my real life. But this one, it kind of was just there, and then Mari's just pretty much being utilized as the kind of plot object that we kind of have to go for before we pretty much get the more importance of her and Akito's relationship towards the end of the game. Literally the end of the game. And the Hania dude's whole goal is pretty simple, and it just feels kind of stretched. I really wish that they hadn't done the open world aspects, focused more time on the main kind of story, getting it nicely, properly paced, and filling it in more rather than a case of hot potato where he literally takes the sister's comatose body and then we essentially do hot potato with him him shuffling her around, going through ley lines and stuff with, well, not through ley lines, but going to like spiritual kind of places and doing stuff with trying to get enough spirits, because it felt almost kind of arbitrary. It's like, we kind of have to end this. And I know it sounds kind of weird. It's like, you enjoyed this story. What the fuck's kind of going on here? It's like, there's issues with it, but this was the main thing that I liked, because everything else was kind of bland for me. And I hope that they kind of fix things, because the shooting was off. Here's the thing. It was off just enough to just make me be like, feel uncomfortable, be like, this could be better, rather than being full on kind of broken of like, I can't aim at Jack. Like, if I was aiming to the right and somehow I'm looking down into the left and I get like thundercracked by something. There were certain kind of bullshit deaths that I would get, but the auto-save system was enough to kind of help me out of those situations, so good job on the save system, guys. It's really kind of weird because I like Tango Works games, but the thing is, I don't like saying this. I love that they took a chance on this, and I hope that if anything, they would do another game with other characters, focus mainly just on the story, make it more along the lines of kind of Evil Within. If you're doing any kind of open world aspects, do it more along the lines of Evil Within 2, instead of these ones. This one went more Ubisoft kind of method, and you don't want to go Ubisoft open world. There's a reason that it's just gotten so kind of cliched and just like, oh my god! I would actually rather have had an Evil Within 3 rather than this, and that's disappointing, because when I first heard about Ghostwire Tokyo, I'm like, ooh, this could be interesting. I'd really like to see what's done with all these different kind of folklore legends and everything, but their execution of them didn't have anything kind of different than I would have had reading other kind of things or watching or playing other kind of things, and that's disappointing for me. Now, again, if you like this and enjoyed this, I'm glad for you. I'm happy for you. Support it. Hopefully they make a sequel that works out well to this. And that's the thing. I want game studios to take chances and do different kind of things. This felt that kind of halfway measure. I wish they had just went full on linear kind of one that had crazy kind of shit with maybe some kind of side stuff within certain kind of missions, almost kind of like a Halo kind of one, where, well, not Halo doesn't really have side certain missions except for certain kind of later ones, depending upon what's kind of put into it. But a linear one where you can get some value add if you go off a little bit of the beaten path and get certain kind of Easter eggs or whatnot, because open world fucks with certain shit. And again, that's down to how I played it. I wouldn't really recommend this to people, which is sad. And I mainly say that because there are better games out there that you would probably get better use out of. Ones that use Japanese folklore, ones that are more first-person shooter, that have better kind of handling, better kind of story. Like, I don't hate this game. I don't think it's a bad game or the worst game possible, but it's that kind of neutral one that, like, you literally have to be bored out of your mind and need something, just anything to kind of work on. And that's after going through a lot of the classics or whatnot. I would recommend a lot of the Final Fantasy games, like old school ones, and also certain other kind of newer ones, but like definitely kind of old school ones to kind of go through and just fuck around with before then. Yeah. I didn't know exactly where this one was going to be, because this is a weird one. It does certain kind of things right with certain kind of characters that pulled me in, but overall it does stuff that's really kind of neutral, and then certain kind of instances gameplay design that really hinders it, but not to the point of being completely and utterly bad and unplayable and broken. So it's that weird kind of aspect of almost a show or a book or a movie where you read and you're like, I don't feel like my time's wasted, but I wouldn't read it or do anything or engage with it again. Yeah, those are always the kind of weird ones to review and do with, because you're like, I don't really have much to say positively or negatively or what I've kind of learned from it. However, I have learned that kind of lesson with this one as well, which is kind of cool, because you always want to try and take something from games. Even if what you take is that you're like, this was okay. So, those are my opinions on the video game. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.